All right, so for this one, we're trying to use our limit as x goes to negative infinity. First step is we plug in. When we plug in, we have a hot mess. There's not a basic limit law there, so we know that we need to divide by the highest power that is in the denominator. Now, looking at the denominator, that highest power is x. Now, the problem here with this question is that you have a square root in the numerator. So if you just take, and I'm going to do this off to the side, if you just take like 4x quantity squared and then divide that by x, it's like, well, how do I simplify that? So in order to deal with the simplification, we are going to do what we did in the last question, where we're going to use the piecewise definition of the square root function. So when we talk about x and negative x, that can also be written in terms of a square root. All right, so let's talk about how we would exactly use that. So we know that just dividing by x for the square root is going to leave a little bit of a question mark as far as what it reduces to. So when we have something inside the square root of x squared, that is the same thing as absolute value of x, which is the same thing as negative x if x is less than 0, positive x if x is greater than or equal to 0. So we know in the denominator we're dividing by x. So that is the same thing as an x or a negative x. Now, this question is really kind of a little subtle here, because with this question, we are going towards negative infinity. So that means that when we divide quote unquote by x, we are going to be using, for x going towards negative infinity, we are going to be using the first piece. So taking the square root of x squared and dividing it by x is going to be the same as using the first piece, which is negative x, and that is if x is less than 0. And of course our x is less than 0 here because we're going towards negative infinity. So the square root of x squared is going to be equal to negative x, and that is our definition of what we are actually going to divide by. All right, so let's see how this is going to work out here. So first step is to divide. Because I have the square root of 4x squared and I'm inside of the square root, I'm not going to use the negative x definition, I'm going to use the x squared definition. So I divide by x squared inside the square root, minus 1 is inside the square root, so I will divide by the x squared. Now, what's a little weird about this question is that now I'm going to plug in, instead of dividing by x, I'm going to plug in the negative x, and then plus 2 over negative x. All right, so when I simplify this, the 4x squared over x squared, that's going to become just 4. The negative 1 over x squared becomes 0 by the basic limit law. The x over negative x, that's going to become negative 1 when I simplify. And then the 2 over negative x will become 0. So the simplification of this will look like the limit as x goes to negative infinity, square root of 4 minus 0 over negative 1 plus 0. Now, the square root of 4, of course, is 2, negative 1, so we get negative 2. And so in this case, it evaluates out that there's not an x available anymore, and so our limit is equal to negative